Throughout Australia's federal election and beyond, younger people are turning out of the political debate, despite the variety of issues young people face. Today, we're looking at a trend reshaping Australia's political landscape. More and more younger Australians are stepping back from politics, so we're going to find some potential causes for this and some pathways going forwards. So, to start off, Australia's youngest voters now hold unprecedented influence. For the first time, younger people under 45 outnumber baby boomers in every state and territory. On paper, that should mean political parties work harder to speak to their language. But there may be some disconnect lingering. Millennials in particular, many now well into their 30s, are showing high levels of disengagement. For some, the promises of economic stability, home ownership, and job security have failed to materialise. They're working contract to contract, burdened with rising rents or large mortgages, and finding little reason to believe political outcomes will change their situation. Gen Z voters, while more digitally connected, are navigating similar pressures. Many are entering adulthood already, priced out of the housing market, facing insecure work, and inheriting concerns over climate change and the cost of living. When the baseline feels like survival, politics can and start to look like background noise to some. So why does this all matter? Well, the electoral power of young people is clearly real, but parties have traditionally campaigned with older voters in mind, partly because those voters turn out in greater numbers, and partly because they've been seen as more politically stable. This leaves younger people in a catch-22 of sorts. They're told their vote matters, but policies they care about most often take a back seat. This is where smaller parties and independents have been making significant gains ever since 2022. The Greens, some progressive independents, and issue-driven campaigns have focused on topics such as housing affordability, climate action, and student debt relief, just to name a few things. Issues young Australians are vocal about. That's been enough to win over the pockets of youth support, but not necessarily enough to keep everyone engaged. Disengagement, though, isn't the same as disinterest. Many young people are politically aware and opinionated. They just don't believe the system works for them. Election campaigns can feel like theatre designed for television rather than conversation that addresses real-world challenges. There's also the perception gap. Young Australians often feel politicians make assumptions about their priorities instead of asking directly. When they don't see their lived experiences reflected in debates, whether that's about the housing, wages, or social services, it reinforces the idea that politics is an insider's game. So, some tools and solutions to all this. Well, some initiatives are trying to bridge that gap. Online tools like Build a Ballot guide users through key policy areas before suggesting candidates whose views align with theirs. The aim is to make politics less abstract and more personally relevant. Others are pushing for structural reform. There's been a suggested bill to be introduced later this year to lower the voting age to 16. In part to engage younger Australians earlier in the democratic process. Supporters such as Monique Ryan argue young people deserve to have a say about policy, and that this could create a habit of participation, much like the way Australia's compulsory voting encourages turnout in older age groups. While such challenges could increase representation, they also face political resistance. Major parties worry about unpredictable voting patterns from younger demographics, especially when existing strategies have been built around older, more stable electorates. Generational differences are a bigger factor than gender divides in Australia's political shift. Research shows that younger Australians as a whole are drifting leftwards, with younger women doing so slightly faster, while some men are shifting right. But the more significant trend is that young people of all genders are turning away from major parties entirely. Some lean towards smaller progressive parties, others towards right leaning alternatives, but many simply feel politically homeless. Disenchantment with the two party system means that frustration across the spectrum, not confined to ideological ones. Importantly, Australia has so far avoided the deep political polarisation seen in countries like the United States. While there are ideological divides, the majority of young Australians remain somewhere between the extremes, even if they disagree strongly with the current direction of politics. So, where are we seeing influence beyond the parliament? Because clearly that is playing some sort of part. Well, for younger Australians, political conversation is often happening outside these traditional institutions. Social media, influencers, grassroots campaigns, and independent content creators are filling a space once dominated by parties and mainstream news. Debates and discussions now often happen on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and other community forums, platforms where political messages have to compete with entertainment, memes, and everyday life. However, these social media influencers, these outlets, these alternative places often oversimplify complex issues, have minimal accountability, and have financial priorities over policy reform. It also leaves a risk for young people to outsource their own political thinking rather than making political decisions for themselves. On the contrary, these influencers do provide greater accessibility, spotlight underreported issues, and are able to demystify the process. This decentralisation of political discussion makes engagement more fluid, but also more fragmented. A young voter might feel connected to a specific cause, such as activism for housing, climate, or Indigenous rights, without feeling connected to politics as a whole. That issues based focus can mobilise large groups quickly, but sustaining long term engagement can be harder. But a recurring theme of all of this is trust, or a lack of it. Many younger Australians say they don't believe politicians will follow through on promises. Policy backflips, watered down commitments, and perception of corporate and lobbyist influences have made it harder for younger voters to take political statements at face value. This isn't just about scandals or individual politicians, it's more the sense that politics as an institution is more about managing image than delivering change. When each election feels like a choice between lesser evils rather than genuine representation, the incentive to participate can weaken. So, looking ahead, well, the disengagement of young Australians isn't inevitable, but reversing it will require more than catchy slogans or youth targeted advertising. It means parties listening directly to younger constituents, not through focus groups, but through open discussions about policies that affect them the most. It also means treating younger voters as equals in the political process, not as a marketing demographic. The problems they face, the housing unaffordability, insecure work, and climate instability, are systemic, and solutions will require sustained political will. Grassroots movements, independents, and smaller parties have shown that there's an appetite for different approaches. Whether the major parties adapt to meet this appetite will not only shape future elections, but the health of Australian democracy. So, all of this in review, quite simply, is that under 45s now outnumber boomers in every state and territory. Economic pressures, whether that's housing, wages, or job insecurity, is a major driver for disengagement. Parties still campaign to older voters, leaving younger Australians feeling sidelined at times. Smaller parties and independents are making gains with youth-focused issues. And disengagement is resulting in a lot of apathy, which is rooted in distrust and feeling unheard. And of course, cultural change and a digital platform is reshaping how political conversations are happening. The challenge going forward is making politics feel relevant, trustworthy, and worth engaging with. So, closing off, young Australians are pulling away from politics, not because one side has failed or because either side is lazy, but because they might not feel that they're being listened to in the current system. Fixing this requires listening, transparency, and genuine willingness to address these issues that matter most to them. Until that happens, most young Australians will continue to step back, not because they don't care, because they're waiting for politics to care about them. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed our content, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you can keep in the loop regarding the important news stories from the world and around Australia. I'd also like to announce the release of our 10th edition of the Snapshots newspaper, talking about all the news stories that have happened in the month of July in a nice compact edition for you to read, combining a blend of modern and old news story presentation into one nice format. Lastly, I'd like to thank our regular supporters and the team for making this video possible. Your support is appreciated, and if you could help, be sure to subscribe to the channel, buy us a coffee, or in any other ways try and support us, such as subscribing to our social platforms. Once again, I'm Heath Clark. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.